Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another unscheduled episode of Fighting the Void. Yes, this is my regular night, but not my regular time. Um, as you notice, I've missed a couple of weeks again. Why? Well, as you saw, if you watched the last one, you know I actually cut that one short because the COVID was getting to me a little bit. Had to go lay down, and it was just it was feeling kind of unpleasant. And I apologize for that, by the way. I debated whether or not to even give it a try. Um, and I thought I could go for it. It turns out I wasn't up to it, not just yet, which is really weird because the very next morning I felt fine. It's like it's like Saturday night was COVID's last hurrah. I woke up Sunday, it was like the weird skin sensation was gone. I could breathe fine. Fever was totally gone. It was like, huh, all of a sudden I feel like $1 million. Kind of weird. Um, but it is what it is, right? And so within a couple of days, everyone else was over it in the house too, and we were good to go. So yeah, it wound up going through my whole family. Um, Nobody had more than like some annoying headaches and just that, a little bit of a lingering crud. That's about it for, like I said, about a week, and that was it. And we were done, and now we're fine and pretty much back to normal, really. So that's good. Uh, But also, I do need to warn you that I'm still going to be inconsistent for a while here because one, this small tiny house rental environment, it's not as conducive to finding a quiet time to do a regular podcast as like the basement in my old house was. Hopefully, I'll be able to find a place in my new house once we get that going. Which I'll tell you now, I there's a good chance I won't be doing any episodes the next possibly 2 weeks because next weekend I'm going house hunting because I officially got word of where I'm going to be calling home um in a few months, and that would be the state of Mississippi. So I'm going to be a Mississippian here in the very near future. So like I said, we're going house hunting next weekend. We're going to spend a week down there. Just checking stuff out, looking at houses. With any luck, we find something that'll work for us, and we'll put an offer in. And a couple months, and well, we'll see how it goes. I'm going to be down there working in March anyway, so definitely plan on having a place down there by then. So we'll just kind of see how that all goes. So yeah, it's still going to be spotty as I'm dealing with things like going looking for a house and uh, moving and working long hours throughout the month of March and possibly April at a different plant, but we'll see how that goes. And then, of course, you know, the final stuff at my plant, and then doing final moving down to wherever exactly the new house will be. So, anyway, that's a little bit of what's going on. Um, and this is going to be kind of a short episode because it's just some quick updates and everything. Um, the rental environment has its perks, I will say. Uh, I don't have any projects. There's no there's very little that needs to be broken, fixed, improved. It just is what it is, which is kind of nice because I'm taking advantage of the opportunity to actually get some reading done. And I've been doing a lot of that lately. I've actually been uh, since about Thanksgiving weekend, I'm plowing through a print book every week or two, which is just awesome. It's kind of like going back to the old days before I just had so many million things to do. So like I said, I'm thoroughly enjoying that. I'm currently reading How the Church Has Changed the World, Volume 1 by Anthony Esolen. It's really good. I just finished uh, What Catholics and Protestants Can Learn from Each Other. by Peter Kraft, who, if you haven't read Peter Kraft, I don't know what's wrong with you. You really should read him. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're Catholic, Protestant, even if you're an atheist, you should go read him because he writes wonderfully. Um, right before that, I finally finished What Really Happened in Wuhan by, what was it, Sherry Markson. And oh, let me tell you, she marshals all of the evidence that the COVID was definitely a lab leak. There is the possibility of a suggestion that it might have been intentional. Well, excuse me, that it might have been intentional, but as she herself says, it's there's very little evidence to support that. You can make a case for it, but there's little direct evidence to support it. But lab leak, there's tons of evidence to support that nonsense. What was really the big takeaways is, one, yes, definitely a lab leak, and two, there was tons of resistance to that idea within the government, within even the Trump administration. Tons of resistance to the idea. There was a group within the State Department that was conducting its own sort of back channel investigation into that idea, but they could never get any real traction because no one wanted to hear it, which frustrated some of them from time to time. Excuse me. Yeah, and then also in academia, you were not allowed to discuss it at all. You were not allowed to discuss that this was a lab leak. In fact, any papers, any studies that suggested that it was, and that had solid evidence for it, they just weren't published in the main. I mean, they had to work hard to get them published in any significant journal whatsoever. But not just that. Okay, you know how everybody talks about peer review, right? It's like, oh, is that study peer reviewed? And what about that one? Is that one peer reviewed? It's not, doesn't mean anything if it's not peer reviewed. Well, you know how things get peer reviewed? Apparently, the way this works is they get uploaded. I apologize for my cat. He is not enjoying being in the rental at all. Sonny, quiet. Um, Here, hold on just a second. The way things get peer reviewed is they get uploaded to what's called a preprint server. And this is where people can go and where peers can see these studies before they're published in journals and review them. Yeah, that's how that works. Well, the people that run these preprint servers, they weren't letting these studies get put on those servers. Which this almost never happens, by the way. And part of at least one of them, their justification for not putting on the preprint server was that, well, it's not peer reviewed. It's like, well, but you're how I get peer reviewed. How can you use me not being peer reviewed as justification to not go on your server? Doesn't make any sense. So yeah, you were basically, the academia was trying to shut this notion down before it could possibly gain any traction. So another big takeaway I'm from this whole thing is do not under any circumstances trust the mainstream media, the supposed trusted sources, for anything, because frankly they're all corrupt. They're all motivated by something other than the truth, or they might care about the truth but not as much as they might care about something else. Like within the government and even with academia, a lot of it was just reacting to Trump. Not necessarily a grand conspiracy, just we hate Trump, so we can't let anything he suggested be true, which is just ridiculous. I mean, if you've at all paid any attention to me over the last year and a half or so, I don't have any particular love for Trump. But doesn't mean I hate the dude. Doesn't mean he's never said anything right. So the very notion of that is just ridiculous and appalling. And well, let's just say it shows that even our lab coated masters are all too human. So, and that doesn't mean you should run to every crazy conspiracy theorist that there is out there on the internet. It doesn't mean that we didn't really land on the moon. It doesn't mean that the Earth is flat. It doesn't mean that Cal Rittenhouse is a weird plant, which I don't even. There are people who think that. I don't understand it at all. Like, what would be the gain for anybody? Anyway, there's basically people. It doesn't mean you have to go and be one of those people who thinks everything is a conspiracy. But what you should do is pay attention to who winds up telling the truth. As Steve Dace has pointed out, basically whatever you're not allowed to say on social media about COVID will wind up being proved true beyond a shadow of a doubt in 2 or 3 months. And that's pretty much been the pattern on this particular issue. So find out who's telling you the truth there. And then, maybe pay attention to them on some other things. Start finding the sources that aren't mainstream approved, but also don't just go absolutely bat crap crazy with everything's a conspiracy now. You don't have to listen to them. Just start finding these small sources you can trust. If you remember the first time I mentioned what really happened in Wuhan, uh, the first person to actually break the story of what was going on in Wuhan, like just the story that there was some sort of infection there that was worth paying attention to, was some random blogger here in the United States. Someone who was just running a blog on infectious diseases. That's it. No one special. Um, no one with fancy letters behind her name or anything like that. Just a random chick who ran a blog on infectious diseases. That's it. She was the first one. Think about that, right? Um, and otherwise, not a whole lot else going on. Uh, over at Gingerland here. I will be getting Clay on to kind of finish his episode in the near future. I'll have to work with him and figure out what works for him to do that. Shortly after the first of the year, I'll be having Declan Finn on. We're going to be discussing the release of his new book called White Ops. It's not released yet. It releases, I think, roughly mid-January. I've read an advanced copy. Short version is really good. If you like, it's a science fiction book, so it's a departure for him. He normally writes things more in the horror genre. He's also delved into like spy thriller stuff a little bit. This is science fiction, but trust me, if you were a fan of his other stuff, you will definitely enjoy White Ops. And otherwise, like I said, I'm just gonna be reading. I'm going to be trying to do at least short episodes here and there in the future. And I apologize. It's going to be spotty. After I get moved, I'll be more consistent. I promise. It's just going to take a little while to get there. At least that's assuming I have a good enough internet connection to even continue doing this. It will be Mississippi, and we are kind of looking rural. So we'll see what happens. But anyway, that's about all I've got for now. So thanks for tuning into this little update. And until next time, keep on fighting the good.